Okay, so MJ's Rewatchables Volume 4, Bulls Magic, 1995, Game 6. We're going to dive into this. This series has been remembered completely incorrectly, including by myself. I'm gonna throw myself in
Wow.
there.
All right.
I watched a lot of this series on YouTube this weekend because I got nothing else to do. Did a lot of deep dive research on it. There has been this feeling that we kind of throw this one away. It's like MJ was 6 for 6 in the 90s. And then it's like, well, what about 95? Nah, we don't count that one. He had just come back from baseball. It's a throwaway. And then the other thing people remember in game 1, he gets stripped by Nick Anderson up 1 with 17 seconds left. They're pressing. For some reason, they don't have Pippen bringing the ball up. I guess because he wasn't a great free throw shooter. MJ beats Nick Anderson. He starts dribbling up, just kind of loses track of him. Nick Anderson comes from behind, knocks it away. They get a fast break dunk. And then at the end of game 1, MJ drives, throws it to Pippen, but Pippen had started a cut, goes flying by him, goes out of bounds. And it was like, wow, a rare, like just shitty end of the game for Michael Jordan. He's wearing number 45. He comes back the next game. He's got 23 on. The reality is he was really good this series statistically. And now you think like the end of game 1 and game 6, which we're about to talk about, he doesn't look like MJ in the last few minutes of game 1, game 6, but he averages 31 a game in the series. He's 31, 7, and 4. He has three games of 38 points or more. Here's what really happened this year. The Bulls weren't good.
Can I just jump you? It's unbelievable. No, I'm going to just give me 10 seconds. Everything you're saying, I've written down because I too was like, wait, the Bulls were 500. And this is remembered as MJ like joined this. See, what happens is they won 50 plus games a year before they lose that Knicks series. So we think like, no, they were really good. No, they went 13-4 when he came back. So MJ comes back.
Their record. They're 34-31 when he comes back.
Exactly. So
they're a 500 team.
That they're this amazing team that he joins up with. Because people muddy the 2 years, and I've done it too. You muddy the 2 years together like they were a 50-plus win team. There were 9 teams that had a better record than them in the regular season once the playoffs started. They were a 5th seed, and we remembered as like Jordan didn't have it. And I'm just so glad that you're pointing all this out. So go back to what you were doing.
Well, just one other piece. This is the only time, basically, from 87 to 98, when they don't have Charles Oakley, Horace Grant, or Dennis Rodman. I think you could make a case. You could put any version of Jordan in this series. You could give me 91 Jordan. You give me 92 Jordan. Knowing what we know now, watching this series, seeing what a bad matchup it was for them, considering they had Will Perdue, Luke Longley, Bill Wennington, Kukoc, and Judd Buechler were their big guys. And they're going against Shaq and Horace Grant. And it was a mismatch. They couldn't keep those guys. Shaq was getting any shot he wanted. They had to double team him. So they're double teaming him. He's passing to whoever he wants. It was just a bad matchup. Chicago's leading rebounders of this series were Pippen and Kukoc. And the fact that Rodman wasn't here, and then they come back the next year. So here's the second piece of this, Russillo. They sweep the Bulls. They sweep the Magic the next year. So now years pass and people go, yeah, well, they lost that Magic. That Magic series was done, but they swept them the next year. Well, you had Horace Grant gets hurt. He only plays 1 game. He gets hurt in game 1. Nick Anderson gets hurt in game 3. And Shaq and Penny had big numbers in that series. It was just the Bulls were better. Rodman did a great job. Rodman averaged 16 rebounds a game in that series, which brings me to my point. I think they probably lose in 95 with the team they had, no matter what version of Jordan you put in there. I think this would have been the one series he gets beaten. Because Orlando had home court too. That game 7 would have been in Orlando. That's the other piece of this. So I don't know. I just think this series has been remembered incorrectly.
Okay, so that's always crazy about Wennington because Wennington kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit there because he's such a prominent part of it before. But Luke Longley, and by the way, when you watch Longley match up against Shaq, you go, hey, you know what? Luke Longley was massive.
Yeah, 7'2".
And he wasn't as stiff at all. He was perfect for kind of what this was. But I'm just so happy that you brought it up because It sounds a little bit like you wanted to count more of a ding on MJ's resume, but we just know how it all works. We just know how it works. Like, unless it's the finals, the record doesn't really count, you know? And anybody that wants to use the first MJ loss against the 86 Celtics, like that one, I've seen a ton of, it's a lot like politics again. The periphery stuff on the edges, the pro LeBron, pro MJ stuff, like you could just have it. And I'll kind of sort through the middle and still come to the same conclusion that MJ's better. So that's why I always thought, oh, LeBron's never got swept in the first round, that kind of stuff. And just like, who cares? Like, spare me that thing. Because like those two Jordan teams that were bad were just bad teams. But when it comes to this is remembered as this version of MJ that was so bad. And it really is the Nick Anderson steal because it's a bad play. Like MJ Nick Anderson's behind him. And, you know, in that spot, I don't think you can rely on a teammate because it's not in transition, really. He's crossed half court, and you can't worry about somebody yelling behind. And then Orlando
You're talking
takes
game
that
one.
Game. Yeah, Game one.
And then the pass to Pippen was uncharacteristic. I mean, I watched a lot of this series, the stuff that's on YouTube. He's definitely not 100% on his game. Like he's way more tired, I think, than he normally would get in the early 90s. Like they're always talking about he's hunched over, he's on his knees. He's not totally in basketball shape. And the other piece is, you know, around the rim, like some of his finish stuff, he just didn't totally have it. Like his rhythm was a tiny bit off. But I'm telling you, that's not why they lost the series because, all right, if he scored 35 a game instead of 31, it still goes 7. And I just don't think they were big enough. I really don't. I think Horace in the first 5 games of the series was 20-12. Dislocates a finger in game 6. Shaq was a 24-13. Orlando in 6 games shot 210 free throws. Chicago shot 164. Purdue, Longley, and Weddington combined were 15-9. And most important, no rim protection at all. You had guys going, no, here's the other fluke with this series. This was the year they moved in the 3-point line. So you had that cheapy 3-point line that the Bulls just weren't a good outside shooting team other than Steve Kerr. Orlando, Penny could make them, but then they had Dennis Scott, Nick Anderson, Brian Shaw could come off the bench. They had 12 threes in game 6, and it was an advantage. And the Bulls like just kind of didn't see that piece of everything coming either. I just think it was an ill-equipped team for where basketball was in 1995.
So the start of the game, Orlando can't miss. They have 25.6 minutes of the game. Yeah. And you're going like, what is going on here? And by the way, for the broadcast that we have the feed of, it's a local broadcast crew because of however the playoff thing worked. And the vibe is dead. Like I thought I had the wrong link twice. Because I go, wait, is this? Because I did that on a different one where I was trying to get a better version of the video. And I go, you're watching a regular season game. Dickie Simpkins is starting. Like, what are you doing wrong?
I switched to TNT. I found a TNT with Bob Neal and Doug Collins. I should have sent it to you.
Okay, well, I watched the local one. And because it's local, we understand how it's going to go. I mean, the entire time, it's just a local broadcast. So, every city's the same when it comes to that. But the MJ part of it, you're right. The first half, and I keep writing it down, like he's got a bunch of turnovers. His shot is off. Anybody that comes back and hasn't played in a while, you just touch around the rim. That kind of stuff isn't right. And then it sort of comes back to you. A couple reads. He was short, and he was just out of the play because Pippen was going off and Kukoc was going off, especially in that first quarter. And it was weird. But then you're right, because then I go, well, wait a minute, go back in. He played those 17 regular season games, and his numbers were terrific. And by the way, looking at Pippen's numbers, the year without Jordan and the most of the year without Jordan, his numbers didn't really change dramatically. He went from like 16 and a half shots a game to 18, when Jordan was gone. He went from like 18, 19 points a game to like 21 or 22. So it wasn't like he turned into a completely different guy. So it was actually not as hard to get him back and those two guys working with each other. But MJ just looks off. So if you did this thing where you go, MJ had missed all this time. At this point, I think he's 26 games in, including the regular season and the playoffs. And then when you go back and look at the game log for the 95 playoffs, which is why I'm so glad you brought it up, because both things are true. Yes, he doesn't look like the Jordan that we've been used to watching on these rewatchables, but he also had 48 in the first game of round 1 against a Charlotte team that was the higher seed. 48, 9, and 8 was his game 1. The rusty Michael Jordan, number 45, goes for 48, 9, and 8. And in game 2, he had 38 against Orlando. Game 3, he had 40. So even if little things were off, he was still putting up insane numbers, which again exactly leads into your point that it's remembered and to use Clemens' line, misremembered as the washed Jordan version, when in reality, like, the production was still nuts. And by the way, the unveiling of the greatest Jordan ever, the 11s.
Whatever version of Jordan is in this series, it doesn't solve the Shaq Horace Grant problem. And I look at this 94-95 Bulls team as really bad planning that cost them this title, but actually in the long run might have been good for them, because summer 94, they're supposed to re-sign Horace Grant, comes really close. He has some sort of mix up with Jerry Reinsdorf, where Reinsdorf offers him a deal, but his agent's not there. Horace accepts. His agent flips out. He thinks it's bad faith. They back out of what Horace agreed to, and then Reinsdorf's like, fuck that guy, I'm out. And this is 94. We had it was almost a lockout, but it wasn't. But free agency starts a little bit later. They're trying to figure out some cap stuff.
And by the way, on my broadcast, the local announcers are like, oh, Horace struggling again. They were doing like a Marv Jordan thing, and then Horace was getting booed.
Right, but Horace played really well in the series.
About.
Yeah.
20,
and people are really mad.
Yeah.
So he goes to Orlando, which was probably their biggest rival other than the Knicks, for just who could be in their way for a title. I went and I actually deep dove because they ended up spending money on Ron Harper, who, if you noticed, if you watch this game, is not really involved in the game. He's like the eighth man for the Bulls, playing 20 minutes a game. Just doesn't
make any sense, because this is pre him being such, like, I was such a huge Ron Harper guy. When they got him, I was like, what? How did they get him? You know?
So they signed him from the Clippers. He wanted out in the Clippers. They paid a lot. They paid $3 million a year for him. Like, they had the cap space that they finally had because Jordan wasn't coming back. So I went and looked at all the free agents that year: Sean Elliott, Dominique Wilkins, Danny Manning, Detlef Schrempf, Purvis Ellison, Tyrone Hill, Xavier McDaniel, AC Green, Mara Ely, Wayman Tisdale, Brian Shaw, Michael Cage, Larry Nance, Antoine Carr. The reason Harper was a bad signing was this was the year the 3-point line moved in, and he was a slashing guy. He was kind of like a very poor man's version of Michael offensively. And once Michael came back, they couldn't play him, Pippen, Kukoc, and Michael at the same time. So they picked Kukoc over him because Harper was such a liability as a shooter. But it's interesting, if they had just signed Sean Elliott instead of Harper, and you added Sean Elliott shooting to them over the next few years, or if they had just brought back Horace Grant, they probably make the finals this year.
Yeah, but don't you think that Harper eventually pays off in such a big way that you have somebody that has these incredible offensive skills that never even, I mean, we're talking about maybe a third, fourth option on a lot of those later 90s.
I get, and the 96 team was his best year, but you look at his stats, he was a little like Iguodala-ish with his offensive output. He's basically 10 a game. I think for the amount of money they spent on him, it's probably a miss. But then the guys I just listed, Sean Elliott and Schrempf, were probably the two best free agents you could have picked. But just losing Horace, that's why you mentioned how people get the 94 and the 95 team confused. The 94 team is so much better because Horace and Cartwright and Paxson are all on that team. Paxson and Cartwright retire, Horace leaves, and it's honestly a bunch of 10th men with Pippen and Ron Harper and Kukoc, who's like, a sixth man on the right team. So Jordan goes back to that. I just thought Orlando was more talented. Penny was first team All-NBA that year. Shaq is a 25-12 every game. Horace was still an all-star power forward. They had Dennis Scott and Nick Anderson shooters. And
this is a really good team.
And then Brian Shaw off the bench.
When you're watching them at the start of it, and Anthony Bowie thinks he's better than everybody.
Right.
Which was always my favorite thing about him, where I go, oh, he comes in, it's like ISO time. And then Bowie's mad about not getting a call against MJ. And he bitches, and I go, this is like this is a 2020. This guy was built for the 2020s. He can complain about every single call.
Well, they beat. It's true. He maybe he came from a time machine. They beat the Pacers the next round. That was a good Pacers team, the 95
7-game
kind
series.
Of Reggie's apex, awesome series. There's some good games in there. They go into the finals, and this leads me to, I want to do this before we kind of broke down this game. The series that get remembered incorrectly, and I think one of them is this Bulls Magic series that everybody just remembers now as, oh, MJ, it doesn't count, when it should. And then Rockets Magic, that finals, which is like, oh, Rockets swept them. That Magic team self-combusted next year. Well, first of all, they were a 57-win team in 95. The next year they won 60. Game 1, famously, Nick Anderson misses the 4 straight free throws. That game's over. Like, that game, I don't know what the win percentage is for Orlando, but
win probability
is way up there. And then Game 3 was another one where they have this must-win Game 3, and that's an awesome game. Like, go watch that one on YouTube. That's Clyde Drexler's best game in the series, but that's a toe-to-toe, and they kind of blow that one too. That series was way closer than a sweep. And just in general, I think this Magic team has just kind of gotten kicked to the curb. I think that team was really good. And I don't think it's a bad thing that MJ lost to that Magic team. Guess what? You're due. Like the Celtics lost in 85 because Bird broke his thumb in a bar fight or whatever, sprained a thumb in a bar fight, and it never came out till after.
Which bar was it?
The rack? No, but remember the guy sued him.
Oh.
No, it was another one. I can't remember the name.
Squire?
No, it wasn't one of the OG ones. But, we don't go, oh, they would have won if Bird didn't break his thumb. It just kind of happens. The ebb and flow of the playoffs, you're going to have a year. It was like, oh, that was the year this happened. Well, this was the year for the 95 Jordan that came back from baseball and they had a shitty team, and that's why they lost. This should count on his resume, I feel like.
Yeah, see, I'm with you on all of it except for the conclusion. Like, I don't understand. We just don't do that. We don't really count the non-finals against guys. And I'm not saying it's necessarily right, but if anything, I left this series going, Jesus, this is another thing that's a positive for Jordan. Like, this is remembered as this negative for Jordan. And it
I agree with you.
When you watch the starting 5 come out and the rotation for Orlando, I'm going, oh my God, that's right. Like, back then, one of the things that we've constantly talked about, look at the second and third player, look at the fourth player compared to the great teams of today. It's not close. It's not close. And yet Orlando can, in this mid-90s stretch where a lot of teams had 2 guys you could depend on to get you a bucket, when they bring in B. Shaw, it's like 5 guys, and that's not even counting Horace Grant as a 20-point guy in this series where he started taking on more offensive responsibility. Shaq, watching it, peak young Shaq, not peak Shaq the player, but just he's actually the best looking 300 and something pound guy you're ever going to see, just the way he moves. You kind of can't believe the announcers aren't freaking out and screaming every 5 minutes, like, look at this guy. And also that Shaq isn't screaming at every teammate, because I can't believe how consistently bad they were at entry passes.
Oh, my God.
When Shaq is set up with his foot on the block, you can't pass it where a guy this big has to catch the ball where he's then repositioning himself further away from a seal. And the entry passes were bad. Part of it was because Hardaway had Pippen and Jordan chasing him around the whole time. And then Hardaway has moments, and his scoring imbalance in this game is crazy. He had 19 in the first half and doesn't score his second half points until throwaway free throws at the very end of the game. So he basically doesn't score in the second half. But he has 19 because he's hitting 4 straight threes. But you'll see the things with Penny where you go, this is why we get so excited about this guy. The smoothness, the way that he could dribble through all these guys, the passing and all this different stuff. But if the question is this Orlando roster underrated historically? It's an emphatic yes, because this is a really good team.
And the other thing with MJ, where it's like, wow, if he didn't play baseball, he would have won 8 in a row. It's just not true. I'm sorry.
I agree with that. I've always agreed with you when you say that.
I think the wear and tear of just trying to do this for 4 straight years would have gotten him one of the years, or 5 straight years, whatever. You talk to anybody who's been in this grind of doing the 9-month 100-game season year after year after year, it's got a shelf life of 4 to 5 seasons. And you go back and you look at the Lakers in the 80s and the Celtics, they would have these years where they would just fall off. Like the Lakers 86 against the Rockets, which was another completely misunderstood series. The Rockets kicked their ass in that series in 86. They could not handle Samson Olajuwon. And they were kind of this tweener Lakers team where it was like they had added Maurice Lucas and they had Rambis, and it was like, oh, well, we'll bring out our big guys. And as the Rockets were like, great, we're going to destroy your big guys. And then the next year they were like, fuck it, we'll get sleeker and faster. And that's how the second half of the 80s goes for them. But you need to retool every once in a while. It's really hard to, year after year, be good. And you look at the moves that the Bulls made this season where you just lose Horace Grant. He's just gone. You replace him with Ron Harper, who's playing 20 minutes a game. You're worse. That's it. That's the reason you lost. You replaced Horace Grant with Ron Harper playing 20 minutes a game. But other series that I feel like have just been remembered incorrectly. Another one, Spurs-Lakers 2002. which we did on the Rewatchables, and we covered this angle, but just quickly, the Lakers had a three-peat. This series is 2-2 after 4 games. They have this awesome game. Horry misses a 3, and now I kind of feel like people go, "Oh yeah, they won 3, and then Shaq and Kobe turned on each other." It's so much more impressive that the Spurs took them down than I think they've ever gotten credit for. No, I'm sorry, 2003, not 2002.
So wait a minute, it's the 03 series.
The 03 series. Right? Yeah, okay, I wrote down 02. I meant 03, where it's Duncan by himself against Shaq and Kobe, who are both, throwing heat. And they beat him. They beat him in a series. And Duncan should get more credit than this for this. He beat Shaq and Kobe when they were both really good and healthy in a playoff series, and then went on to win the title. It's, to me, the greatest thing on his resume is that 03 season. Pistons Lakers in 04 is another one. The Pistons just killed them in that series, and they showed one of the games today. That series is demolition. You could argue that they should have won 5-0, because even the one game the Lakers won, they barely won.
I can't. By the way, when you go back and look at that one, and working with Chauncey, I would go, "What happened?" He goes, "Man," Chauncey just be like, "Man, I tell you what, we knew from the jump they couldn't guard us."
Right.
and it's true. Like, they lit them up. When you look at all the numbers, if you go back and be like, okay, what was, like, the rebounding percentage was insane. They fouled the shit out of Detroit. They lived at the free throw line. And then the shooting for the Lakers, like Kobe's
terrible in that series.
He averaged 23 a game in that series. He shot 38% overall and 17% from 3.
Didn't he take like 125, 130 shots in that series? What was it?
113. He was 4 or 23 from 3. Again, like I said, 17%. Here's what's weird. He played 230 minutes and he averaged 3 rebounds a game. And then nobody else shot the ball. Derek Fisher shot 31% overall. Devin George is below 40%. Gary Payton,
the team was
30%.
bad. Medvedenko has a moment.
Karl Malone played 125 minutes. He shot 33%. So Shaq was incredible. Everybody else was way below what you'd expect.
Another series that's remembered incorrectly is the 07 series, which we covered with Nash about, the Robert Horry shove series. The Spurs were great that year in 07. They won in 6. I think in 5 of the 6 games, they were up 10 in the fourth quarter. God bless that Suns team, but I still think the Spurs win the series. Even if that Horry shove, even if their guys play, I think they could have stolen the series, and I think that's what sucks about the Horry shove. Nash feels like they were better. I think that Spurs team, you have Duncan is like his last piece of his real prime, and you have Parker and Ginobili rounding into the all-stars they became at that point. That team was just really good. 09 Magic Cavs. This is a Kevin Clark staple. Everyone's like, oh, and the Magic caught fire. They shot the lights out and shot the Cavs out of the series. Clark always points out that's not actually what happened. They shot threes all year. Nothing that happened for them in that series was different than what their recipe was all year. It was Dwight Howard and guys shooting. LeBron was awesome in that series. Didn't matter. They won.
LeBron was so good in that series.
Yeah.
And,
didn't
that
matter.
One, that shouldn't really be held against him. That series is real simple for me. The second, and it was one of those things that I couldn't see it until I could see it. And it's the perimeter guys were enormous, and the perimeter guys for Cleveland were small.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do anything with those guys. And you go, oh, wait, like this isn't going to work out.
2010 Celtics Cavs and 2011 Mavs Heat. I'm lumping these together because these are, if you're going to do the GOAT argument with LeBron, you really have to explain these 2 series. You just do. Jordan never had 2 series in a row like this. Like that Cavs thing was so weird the last 2 games. And you can look at the stats and be like, well, game 6, he scored 29. It's like, I'm sorry, you had to watch the games. And I'll never forget Inside the NBA coming on after game 5 that all of those guys, they were so disappointed with LeBron. They just felt like he kind of disappeared from the moment when the team needed him the most. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on with the free agency coming. There was a lot of pressure. The team wasn't very good. But that year and then the year after, that Dallas series where they should have gone up 2-0, they completely choke in game 2, and they go to Dallas, and Dallas just figures out how to beat them. And that's a weird one to remember 9-10 years later, because it's really just Dirk and a bunch of awesome role players. And you look at that Miami team, the game was on today. It's like Wade, peak Wade, Wade's last great season, Bosh, LeBron coming off 2 straight MVPs. And the Mavericks just knew how to beat them. And I don't think that series was a fluke, but those two together, I think just there's a LeBron narrative there that I think has slipped through the cracks. Spurs Heat 2014. I just think that Spurs team was so underrated in so many different ways. And it is, to me, the other great team of the 2010s that doesn't get enough attention. And then the last one I had was Cavs Warriors 2016. Just, game 4, must win for Cleveland. Golden State beats them. You have Draymond with the nut punch at the end, leads to the suspension in game 5. But I left game 4 going, oh, the Warriors are going to win in 5. This series is over. They're better. We've solved this. This is the greatest team ever. And that nut punch is still way up there. Any other series you have from the last 25 years where you're like, oh, this is now being misremembered?
Maybe the T-Wolves and Rockets with Garnett and Marbury. Or it's like when you blast a team in the first round in a short series and you're like, you guys are next. Because that was like that Bullets Weber team that lost to the Bulls. Remember that one? Where it was, whoa, like they competed.
Something's here.
Yeah, this is like next 10 years. You're going to be saying how many rings, what's the over-under rings? 3?
The Nets had one of those. Remember Kenny Anderson and Derek Coleman? That one year where
that was a long time ago.
They threw some punches at they exchanged some punches with the Bulls. They were kind of, all right, these guys.
That'd be there. That would be, if this thing goes on, we're 6 months without sports, we should rank first round exit teams that people liked way too much that never did anything.
Well, the Marbury Stoudemire Suns was up there for me. Remember they had that great game against the Spurs in like 2003? It's like, look at these guys. The new Malone and Stockton.
Well, look, every night Marbury, there was a stretch there where you would look at his numbers and go, holy shit, like 35, 12 assists, couple boards, shoots the lights out. And you're like, what, do they win? Like, no, they lost again.
He was like Westbrook, where it just seemed like when he wanted to get to the rim, he got to the rim, period. He's getting the rim. And that's it. And that's what he was like for 7-8 years watching.
And when he's young, when you're young and you're watching it at first, and you don't care about the wins, you're like, this guy is going to be one of the 3 best players in the league. Like, to think that about early Marbury wasn't really crazy because he was that special. Because he was also a little thicker, too. Like, he wasn't Iverson in that, Iverson pound for pound's as tough as anybody, but Marbury had a little bit more to him.
He got traded straight up for Jason Kidd when Jason Kidd was one of like the best 6 players in the league.
But Phoenix had to get him out of there.
I know Phoenix had to get him out of there, but that's at least how talented I think people thought. Speaking of big point guards, I was watching Game 6 of Dallas Golden State, which was on my DVR. That's how
Baron Davis.
That's how desperate I am. That We Believe.
Oh my gosh!
And it's Steve Kerr said that's the loudest arena he's ever been in at any point of his career. That Game 6. It's basically a tie game at halftime. And the Warriors go on like a 70-2 run in the third quarter. Like, there's just Captain Jack's making threes, Baron Davis. I really miss that version of Baron Davis.
That version of Baron Davis.
Oh, I love that version.
That version of Baron Davis is just so filthy because there's such an edge to the game, too. It's almost like he had already, he ran full court, like, and his crew didn't lose for 5 games, and then he showed up to the NBA game that he had to play in. Like, that's what I think of when I think of, like, prime Baron Davis. And Baron Davis is, like, one of those dudes. It's kind of like he's the son of Rod Strickland, where I always say Rod Strickland's a guy that other players have this kind of awe about, and you're like, oh, wow, that's Rod Strickland, huh? And there's this kind of like, yeah, man, that guy could fucking go.
Guy's amazing.
Baron Davis is that guy for whatever his era is. And
it's so funny you said that because Nash told me, I think he even said it on a podcast we did, that was the guy he hated playing the most out of anyone from that entire era was Baron Davis. He just fucking hated playing him. He said it was like playing a NFL running back who
could jump over you.
Yeah, you're beaten up after the game because he would just, when he went into you, it went through your whole body. And he was just like, I was just miserable playing him every time. All right, back to this RewatchaBulls. Bulls go up 36-31. Magic take a 2-point lead at halftime, then 2-point lead heading into the fourth quarter. We finally got ourselves an awesome Scottie Pippen game this game. He's doing everything defensively. I think he has like a 26, 12, and 9. I think one of the things I love about him, they go into it with The Last Dance, is that whole point forward thing where it's like he was a point guard and then he just grows 7 inches, but kept all the point guard skills. When I watched this Bulls team, and granted it turned out great for them with the 6 titles, I wonder why he just didn't have the ball all the time. I would have used him like the whole point forward thing. I really would have point forwarded him because I love the decisions he made. I think the other team hated when he had the ball. The other guy that was like this was Kukoc, because Kukoc had that nice little low post game and they never went to it. And then every time they went to it, he would get a good shot. But I just watching it, I felt like the triangle was almost the wrong offense for those mid-90s teams. I just would have let Pippen cook. Am I overthinking it?
No, that's not one of those things. I don't like to do the play calling thing because there's so many different things happening in this game. Like, it's amazing the Bulls were even in it and then up in the first quarter, considering what Orlando did. They started 8-10, and then I think they finished 2-10 or something like that. I think it was a 10 of 11. It was just they made every single shot the first 6 minutes of this game, and you're like, how is Chicago even in it? But Pippen was amazing, and Kukoc was amazing, and Kukoc in this game reminds you of why he comes over as a 25-year-old rookie in a team like the Bulls. Shout out to Krause, even seeing this, because he's so big, but he has all these little skills in between. There's a great pace to his game, and he would make the right pass, but he'd also make the right cut off the pass and all this stuff. I felt like Chicago ran more stuff than the other games that we were watching. Like, it just felt like there was more stuff, and it wasn't always setting up the triangle and getting the weak side guy to flash to the free throw line for a wide open shot, because they had a lot of options. Like, even Longley was somebody that was respectable, at least in this game. But MJ's so not involved in the first half, and when you go to the third quarter, it's 85-83 Magic. MJ at that point's 5 of 15 with 17 points. He's having a bad game. Marv would have been so excited doing this one. There's 9:30 to go.
Marv would have loved it.
And that's finally at the 9:30 minute mark. MJ's like, all right, enough of this shit. He has a turnaround where he hits a turnaround jumper. You're like, wait a minute, that's the first time I feel like the whole game he looks like MJ I'm supposed to see here. The next possession, Judd Bushler takes a jumper that MJ sets up. He misses it. MJ tips it in, and then he goes and
that was
up.
that almost looked like he had a great Gatorade for like 5 minutes there.
Exactly. 3 straight possessions. It was all MJ. So that would be not my counter to your Pippen thing. It was just that having Pippen set everything up was working, but it was clear that MJ, especially knowing he just put together these monster games just a few games earlier, and it is this bad to this point, that he had just had it. And he has this incredible stretch. He has a steal, and then he dunks it, puts him up 95-92. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but Orlando's falling apart. And you're watching it going, wait, I know Orlando wins. How do they win this game?
Well, the key thing for this, they're down 8 with 3.5 minutes left.
102-94. And when they go up 102-94, the local announcers that I have are like, that's the nail.
Right.
That's the nail.
Well,
and it's the nail. You expect it.
BJ hits a 3.
Yep.
Timeout. Orlando comes out of the timeout. They miss. Comes back down. They forget about BJ's in the corner. Exact same 3 at the 3-minute mark. Misses it.
Misses.
And if he makes that, the game's over. The key thing, though, is Horace gets hurt. He hurts his finger and ends up really not playing in the fourth quarter, which means they have to play Brian Shaw. And I think that was probably their best lineup. I know Horace was awesome in this series, but when they had Brian Shaw at point guard, then Penny could play off the ball. They just had Shaq and 4 shooters, and they're stumbling into this small ball futuristic lineup, where it's like, oh, this is actually where 20 years from now, this is the lineup that every basketball team would be playing. Horace Grant wouldn't be playing, right? It would just be like Shaw, Penny, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott, Shaq. Come stop us. Go, please, double Shaq. We have shooters everywhere. We'd love it if you doubled them. And they basically go on this run. Armstrong misses a 3. Shaq jump hook. Kukoc loses it. Penny hits a 3. Bulls fans get super quiet. Pippen gets posted up, misses a little 4-footer, and then has a little tip in and doesn't go in. Now you're watching it going, oh, this is one of those years where it's just not meant to be. Horrible blocking foul on Pippen. Felt like it was a charge on Shaw.
Nothing's a charge in the 90s.
Yeah, no charge.
Great call. Great call.
Yeah, you hate charges. MJ's like, all right, I got this, guys. Airball. No legs. Just looks
Airball.
dead.
And they subbed him out for a minute, too, of game time. They subbed him out for a minute of game time, and he looks just toast, even for him.
Because he was spending too much time, I think, trying to defend Penny on the other end. Now, here's a mistake I thought. So Kukoc is out there, and he's on Nick Anderson. I probably would have had Ron Harper out there because they weren't going to Kukoc anyway at this point. But Anderson just torches Kukoc. So now all of a sudden the Bulls are down one timeout. Set up a play to MJ. MJ drives. Double team comes at him at the paint. Perfect pass to Longley. And we have the bizarre version of the Charles Smith game. Longley goes up. He's 7'2". It gets tipped a tiny bit as he's going up, but he still has his hands right even with the rim, laying it in and just kind of chucks it sideways. It doesn't go in. They stupidly foul. Scott makes 1 of 2 free throws, so they have another chance to tie it. They're only down 2, the Bulls. MJ takes it, does this weird spin move fall away thing, and Shaq comes over to help. He's got 3 guys on him, and he ends up throwing it away. And I think that's why people remember this, like, oh, MJ, he wasn't MJ that year. It's like, well, maybe somebody just played good defense in a playoff game. Law of averages is he's not going to win every playoff game for the entire 90s. There's going to be moments when, you don't have it. But I thought the Magic legitimately won this series, and I don't think it's fair to them that it has an asterisk, personally.
Well, you should take it off because it's just to watch it and to see the talent they have out there. It's a great point about Brian Shaw because what happens with Penny's 19 in the first half and how easy the 19 were because he's hitting these shots, but it's clear that MJ and Pippen decide, well, whoever is on him, just eat him up, and he doesn't score. And the stuff that they allow, especially in that first quarter where no one's really contesting, they don't run guys off the three-point line the way we're used to today, but they'd also, even in a playoff game, kind of let you set up your post offense. And then they were doing some different stuff with how they would double Shaq. And Shaq was really good on some of the predetermined reads, and he would deliver the pass. Like he knew, okay, I'm getting doubled here. I'm going to kick it down to somebody else.
He's so impressive in this series.
He's incredible too. And the defense now with the Shaq thing, like how would he do showing, but it doesn't matter because he's always in position on drives. Like he's really good on some of that stuff. And there's a few moments. How about when Pippen gets him in a switch and Pippen brings him back out where he's perimeter against center and he's like, I'm going to drive past you. Shaq strips him, goes length of the court for a dunk on his own. It's nuts. And it's actually
I couldn't believe that he didn't get caught from behind.
No, he didn't get caught. And they were trying to challenge him at the rim. And even Shaq's kind of like, am I going to make it 60 feet dribbling? All right,
without
let's see what
falling
happens. Over. Yeah, and he does it. And then there's also another play where Orlando has a miss. The ball kind of is loose in the air towards the free throw line. Shaq grabs it and does a no-look behind his back bounce pass to Horace Grant, who then gets fouled. And then Pippen gets a technical. So they get the free throws.
That was nice.
Tech. Yeah, but MJ, go ahead.
We didn't mention the United Center with this because in 93, the last time we did RewatchaBulls, it was the old stadium, Chicago Stadium, amazing. Then he leaves, and then the United Center gets built. And now he's in the TNT broadcast in the second half when he misses a couple shots, and Doug Collins doing the game. He's like, I don't think Jordan likes this end of the stadium, Bob. We've seen this over and over again. Something about this stadium, the site, or I don't know what it is. I just feel like everything was uncomfortable for him coming back. He had the 17 warm-up games for the playoffs and was just getting used to these new teammates. There's just different guys on the team. He's got his baseball body. I get all the excuses. I still think he played really well. I was impressed. Oh, sorry, he wasn't the best player of all time, but he's still, he was still the best guard in the league. The all NBA guards that year, I think it was Penny Hardaway and I think Sprewell. I think we're the 2 first team all NBA guys. Jordan comes back, hasn't played in a year and a half. He's the best guard in the league right away. So I just think the concept of him being a shell of himself is just wrong, and we should stop it.
Yeah, he's MJ again for those 5 minutes in that fourth quarter. And then, he strips somebody, he goes and dunks. And Orlando is falling apart. Like, they have 3 straight turnovers in a row. MJ comes back in at 5.5. They're up 99-92. BJ hits that 3. It's 102-94, 3:24 left. And I'm telling you, you're not going to believe that they lose the game, because you're like, look at this Orlando team, and they're pissing away these turnovers. They're bad They have one where Hardaway just, after an inbound, dribbles out of bounds. He just, for no reason, dribbles, like Penny's kind of a mess in the second half. And then Nick Anderson, who was really quiet offensively, hits that 3. He hits that step back on Kukoc, and then they make the free throws. And it just, all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute. Like, if I were in that crowd as a Bulls fan, I would be leaving that arena going, what the hell just happened this season? Like, how did that, like, you're thinking, no way this isn't going to game 7. And these new guys are going to be rattled because MJ's back.
And I think that's the takeaway of this, just being there 25 years ago. There was this assumption Michael was going to figure it out because of our history with him. And even like during that game, and I don't remember where I watched it or anything like that, but I guarantee when they were up 8, timeout, 3 minutes left, it's like, I can't believe we thought they were going to lose. It's fucking Michael Jordan. What were we doing? They're going to go to Orlando. They're going to win a game 7. Like, this is Michael. Of course, this is how it's going to play out. And it's really hard to overstate how shocking it was when they fell apart, and all of a sudden it's over. And people are walking out of the building. It's shocking.
I think even Orlando, when you look at the Magic bench, once they know, okay, we're up 4, it's a free throw thing here at the end, and they're looking at each other kind of high-fiving, like, and they still have the Pacers. They're not even in the finals yet, and it's like, we actually did it. I'm telling you right now, watching Nick Anderson in game 1 strip Michael from behind was like finding out my dad's not my dad. Like, and that's an unfair thing to do to LeBron. But no one has ever had that like MJ, where you didn't think it was even possible that he wasn't going to show up in that moment. And yes, he's missed game-winning shots and that kind of stuff, and he has that air ball at the end of the game. In this game, you're like, what the hell was that? But that game 1 thing with Nick Anderson, because it isn't just a good defensive play, it's just you lost track of a guy and you got stripped behind. You're like, you're not 40, MJ. You got stripped from behind in 1995.
It's
like,
just, it wasn't comfortable.
It wasn't.
But you know what's funny though?
Possible.
This is his worst playoff moment ever, right? This series. And he put up 31 a game, and he was awesome in like 4 of the 6 games and had a couple fuck ups near the end.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
LeBron had 2010, those last 2 Celtic games. He had the entire 2011 finals. The 2014, that Spurs Heat series, where they just kind of disappear as that goes along.
Everybody else, I wouldn't hold that against LeBron. Like, everybody, that was when LeBron's sitting on the bench going, you know what, this whole I'm going to stay in Miami 1 more year deal. Like, he's going, I'm out of here now, because everybody around him, I thought, had fallen off. I hold
it against him 10% because I don't know. I just like
because you want to be a jerk about it.
No, I just feel like the champs. They were the defending champs, and I thought they rolled over that game.
I thought San Antonio was better, was mad,
I think they
and they didn't miss. Remember how many threes San Antonio made in that series where you're going, oh my, like, are they not going to miss? And it was kind of new for us still.
When was the last time you watched it?
I watched it not that long ago, actually.
I just remember. I didn't like their second half. And by the way, the Celtics have had stuff like this too. Like, I really don't like the Celtics game 6, 88. And they're banged up. I get it. But I just feel like they kind of rolled over in Detroit when Detroit took it for them. So, they like Jordan, at least in this thing, he's fighting to the bitter end. He's not playing that well. But even when they lost, it's like, holy shit, I lost. You could see it. So he has this quote after. He said he had miscalculated in his plan to, quote, steal a title after returning for the last 17 games in the postseason. This is BJ Armstrong's very adamant about this, that Jordan's looked at the league. He looked how kind of like diluted it was and was like, I can come back and steal a title this year. So he said, I'm looking forward to having a training camp with these guys. I think over the course of an 82-game season, we could do something special. I've got the hunger back. But this guy was so good. He disappeared for 20 months. He's like, I think I can steal the title. I'm just going to come back.
But he's still
all I've been doing
so
is training
young.
for baseball. Yeah. what was he, 29, 30?
No, he's got to be 30.
He's like 31 at this point? Yeah, 31.
Right. But I mean, that's the thing is he kept retiring and you're going, well, wait a minute. How old is this guy? And he was 31 that year. He retired again when he was 34. And so when he came back to the Wizards, as much as everybody's like, this guy's so old, I mean, he still was only 38 when he came back to the Wizards that first year. Another little small side note about the Nick Anderson part of this in that game one. After game one, he had said, I could do that to number 45. I couldn't do it to number 23. And then that's when MJ, as you point out, came back game two with number 23 on. Team got $525,000. Russ Granick has the all-time power play quote saying, we can't just have guys wearing whatever number they want every single night. He says it about MJ. MJ gets fined $5,000 and the Jordan 11s are released. And Nick Anderson was actually picked by Jordan to wear the Jordans.
Because he was a Chicago guy.
And yet he says that about MJ, and MJ was so pissed, he put on a Discman headphones and didn't talk to the media after, and didn't talk to the media the rest of this run.
One other thing about this game, and then we're going to go. So in the TNT broadcast, there's this pivotal elimination game for your Suns. They're playing the Rockets. It's game 6. It's just going on another channel. And they're going, over on TBS, Charles Barkley with 27 in the first half. The Suns looking to stave off elimination. I'm like, what were we doing back then? Why would we have these two games on at the exact same time? What a miscarriage of justice.
When I was watching one of the other games, they were at the beginning of the YouTube video for a Bulls Magic game is Akeem being interviewed by Hannah Storm, and they join the broadcast and go, haven't missed much, 10, 12.
Yeah.
Going, what the fuck?
By the mid-90s, we should have figured this stuff out.
Yeah, that's like when restaurants are bragging about real chicken.
Yeah.
Now, and you go, that shouldn't be something you're bragging about.
That's it for MJ's Rewatchables Volume 4. We're going to step these up. We're going to do a couple more because this is really the last sports we have. Once the last dance is over, it's going to get dark. Now, you like when it gets dark. You like when it gets weird. You're ready to get your fucking weird on.
I'm not afraid. The recruiting stories did great. We're doing part 2 this week. So I have like 5 guys on. I go, give me your best story about recruiting. Matt Leinart talks about being up at Michigan. And he said he got so drunk the whole time he was there that then when he had to throw, he's like, I felt like crap. And he goes, they offered me though. They didn't know how hungover I was. And I was like, wow. And he goes, and then I really wanted to go to Michigan because Pete Carroll wasn't the coach yet. Like the guy he committed to at SC was the whole different staff. And he's like, this Pete Carroll guy, like, I don't want to play for him. And then he decided to play for him. And the rest is history. So those are great. We have 5 new guys coming out for that. I know we're doing a little rewatchables as well. But yeah, I'm always ready to go. We should do the 86 World Series.
Oh, man. Why would you do that to me? Game 6?
Because now you have 4 rings. Why?
You know, I was watching the Aaron Boone game on ESPN.
I saw that.
Game 703. And McCarver talks about how he had mentioned how Clemens had said, I didn't ask out of game 6 of the World Series. That's not true. And McCarver tells this whole story during the game. He's like, John McNamara called me, the Red Sox manager. And Joe, I'll just tell you, he was adamant that Roger Clemens asked out of that game. He said it was 17 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. He did not want to continue. So just in fairness, that was John McNamara's side of the story. It's just this random anecdote of the game. He's murdering Clemens. Clemens is pitching. But
that's amazing. And the thing is when you watch Game 7 with Pedro, you can see why they leave him in, though, on the left-right stuff. Like, I'm not saying it's the right call, but you can see the pattern. Now, it's not great that Pedro's looking at Grady Little in the dugout being like, are you going to take me out of the game? Like, we normally know what the plan is the whole time. But there's an argument to be made that once he had one batter, you knew he was going to get like 2 or 3 more. That's all. So let's not do 03 Game 7 because that's luckily emotionally things had worn off a little bit because I'd worked for the minor league team in 02 in Trenton when they were still the Red Sox. And then I was doing it every single day in Boston in 03. If that had happened in 99, I may just now be getting paroled.
But it's great. They're showing and remember the last time these two pitched and they just show the clip of the Don Zimmer brawl, which is a real thing that happened.
Were you there for that?
I think I was. No, I wasn't. I was at the 99 one. I was in LA. I was working for Kimmel. But yeah, the Zimmer
I was
thing.
at all those games. And it just the tension, the nastiness. I mean, it's nothing.
Jacko was on the pod Thursday. He said it was like a Roman Coliseum. There was so much hatred in the fans.
Much hatred.
It'll never be like that ever again. I don't feel like. All right, Russillo, listen to your pod this week. Oh, we're gonna do. You, me, and House are gonna do an episode of the RewatchaBulls as part of your one of your pods later in the week, where we're gonna do the Bullets.
Perfect.
Bulls.
That plays in perfectly to our plan. Then in August we're doing the first rounders.
Good seeing you.